Ladies and gentlemen, I've got the one and only Mr. Erwin Cronk joining me today for a client success interview. We're going to talk about the work that we've done over the past 4 months. We've been working together to help him take control of his business and personal finances, optimize his performance, connected him with a UK based tax specialist to get clarity and confidence on his tax situation, and much more. Erwin is an online business owner from the UK with a remarkable background, especially for someone so young. Honestly, you'd never guess his age from the way that he speaks and carries himself. I still forget every time we talk, but he's very sharp, grounded, and brings a ton of wisdom to the table. So I'm really, really excited for this one. And we're going to dive right in. Erwin, welcome, brother. Would you mind kicking things off with a quick overview of your background, who you are, what you do, and what your business looks like, brother?
Yeah, of course. Too kind with the intro. So, my background, I've got a couple of businesses at the moment, run a consulting business and an agency, and we've been optimizing a bunch of stuff on the finances side, on so many different aspects of the business, and it's been, honestly, to say the least, completely game changing for everything that we've been doing, and a lot more to come. So, I'm excited to discuss everything we're doing and all the changes that we've seen.
Love to hear that, brother. We're going to dive deep into each of those parts, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your age, if you don't mind sharing? Because, again, the way that you carry yourself and the experience that you have, I think a lot of people would not guess that. And I think it's just a good reminder, just a bit about your background, what got you here, and if you want to share a little bit more just about the businesses that you're currently running.
Yeah, absolutely. So started in the info space about 5 years ago and came in at initially as a closer, worked my way up until eventually I sat down and I was like, well, I'm doing the work for else other people and thought I make the leap myself and met Eduardo in that process. We were both working in the same company and we both made the leap at about the same time to go all in on our own thing. And that was straight away. I was like, if I'm going to go build a great company, you need great people around you to support you, help you with finances, business, marketing, whatever it is. And it was at that point where I had no idea about my finances. I had no clue what I was doing. We always think about sales, marketing, the obvious things, but not about finances, which that was the biggest bottleneck for me. I would have great months financially, look at my bank account and go, there's no difference between last month, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And it's like, what is happening here? I'm doing all of this work. And that was initially where I made contact and I was like, dude, just straight away off of the first month, the changes that were made from all my past experience where it almost feels like business is a lie, where everybody focuses on sales and marketing, but long term it gets you nowhere when you have no cash in the bank. You do all of this work and then it results in nothing, just a striped screenshot at the end of each month. And just since then, it's been completely game changing, seeing now more money in the bank account and compensating for the work that I've been putting in.
Well, I think that's a great place to kick things off. And yeah, I want to just emphasize a little bit on what you just mentioned. And I think we've spoken about this concept. I've probably shared this in a couple other places about like the business priority pyramid, right? Where it speaks to like the business's needs, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where, yeah, what you're sharing, especially I think in the info space, right? Like for online coaches, where it's always about like marketing and sales and like increasing top line revenue, right? And just to be clear, it is important, right? Like if you look at this pyramid, sales is at the bottom level because without sales, there's no business, right? Like that's the oxygen of the business. But as a lot of you, or like Erwin or myself, even that's why I got so obsessed about it, you get to realize that once you achieve that, it's not enough, right? Like the next thing ideally is achieving stability, right? If you look at the pyramid, the second level is what we call the profit level or reaching stability, which is what me and Erwin have been working on because Erwin, without a doubt, has a lot of knowledge on how to do marketing and how to do sales and making money. But just like him and like myself a couple years ago, yeah, we try to take that jump to reach the third level, which is order, right? Which is trying to generate efficiency, but without having that stability or that stable, which I always give people the analogy of like, it's like if you're trying to build a third floor building and you try to go from the first to the third without having a solid second floor, right? And then things end up crumbling, falling apart, and it is way more costly from time, energy, attention, and money, which are limited resources that we have as entrepreneurs, especially to fix that mess versus preventing it. So, yeah, I think that's a great place to start with, yeah, all the work that we've been doing to achieve that stability. And I think what you just shared about, if you can dive a little bit deeper in that, because I think it's a problem that a lot of people face, is what you just said of like, yeah, you're just focused on like the Stripe screenshot and like selling more. But at the end of the month, it's crazy. And sometimes to see like how the fuck after making more money this month or this quarter versus the previous one, there's still the same amount of money in the bank, right? So can you tell a little bit more about how that experience was for you and what that looks like after the changes that we've made, because you've had a pretty interesting and remarkable growth with your businesses and all the work that you've been doing in the last year. So yeah, I think a lot of people would resonate with that.
100%. Yeah, I think the quote that always comes to mind is what doesn't get measured, oh, sorry, what doesn't get managed doesn't get measured, or whichever way around it is. But that's really what the failure was, is not tracking finances correctly. And so knowing that in advance going into every single month, if you have no system in place to be able to track it, it's going to get used, right? Like it's using willpower as opposed to having a system in place. And that's what we built was instead of each month opening my bank account on my phone and saying, oh, I've got this much left, I'm going to try and save it. It's let me prevent myself from even being able to use these resources, because if I don't do that, they're going to get used. And so there's so many things from like implementing different bank account strategies to having systems in place to day-to-day life that would prevent me from doing that, because willpower, like we always discuss, is limited resource. We only have so much of it, and you can't rely on that on a day-to-day basis. When you go out knowing you have X amount in the bank account, you're going to spend it if you can. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday you're going to make that mistake. And so creating the systems where, for example, when I go out, I only have a certain amount in my bank account as a system so that I'm spending that amount instead of 5 times more, 10 times more. And that was the biggest change. It's such a small thing that's just not discussed in this space. And it's why it's been so powerful to have these conversations, is how do you actually manage your money? Not like in some boring accounting way, but like a real way that excites you every single month, where you look and you go, I did this much work and it actually resulted in more money. That's what happens at the end of each month now, is you open your bank account and you see the fruits of your labor, as opposed to, damn, I did all this work and there's only this much left in my account. But since doing that, like I've been making more money profit than I ever have, because not only has the revenue been up, but expenses are down because I'm actually tracking them instead of thinking, oh, who cares? It's just software. It's just this. It's just that. But thinking like that, it stacks up. The more you make, the more you spend, and you never get anywhere. You might make a little bit more, but at the end of the day, the profit stays the same because you justify spending more because you're making more, so you get nowhere. And so that's been a massive change, is looking at it like that, of if you make more, that doesn't mean you should be spending more, and instead building systems in the back end to prevent yourself from making bad mistakes and relying on willpower to do so.
Yeah, bro, I really love that, and I think a big thing that stands out from that, which yeah, I think we've like been diving deeper into that, is the whole. And I think we've spoken about this a lot, me and you together in our a lot of our conversations. That the key to maximum outputs is to get your biology to work for instead of against you, right? And I think especially as high achievers, entrepreneurs, especially people in this space where we like to see ourselves as like, yeah, A-type hustlers, work hard, like very high achieving people, we tend to forget that at the end of the day, we're humans, right? Which means that we are behavioral beings. And what that means is that even though some things make sense on paper logically, sometimes we, even though they make sense on paper logically, we don't behave that way, right? And that's why I loved the profit first system, which is what we've been implementing, what I got certified in, and why I became so obsessed about it. Because as you just said, is how can you build a system where you're playing, instead of playing defense and being reactive of like, oh, I made a lot of money, I ended up spending a lot of money, and by the end of the month when I'm doing my finances, you're like, holy shit, where did all the money go, right? And you're trying to check and like play defense. You're playing offense. You're like, hey, you know what are the things that make you tick? Because at the end of the day, that's what profit first, how profit first was built, was taking human behavior, like keeping human behavior top of mind. And what that means is making sure that the system was created in a way that it was allowing you, whoever implements it, to use your own habits, right? So one of the main habits that entrepreneurs have is, for example, when it comes to checking their money, is logging into their bank account. So instead of trying to go against human behavior, which is like, oh, every time you want to know what's your financial situation, just go to your P&L or check your whatever, your statement, your cash flow or whatever, like, and then add all of these numbers. And then at the end of the day, you're going to look at one number, which is an arbitrary thing. It's not going to be the actual thing that is going to be in your bank account. But whatever you do, just don't check your bank, right? That's what a lot of like older traditional accounting formula says. And like profit first is like, no, instead of trying to go against your human nature, because as you just said, in that case, you would be relying on your willpower. It's like tap into it, right? Like the small plates analogy, I think we spoke a little bit about that. And that had a big impact in how you're managing your finances. So I think that's a really great example of like what tapping into human behavior is, which you might sharing a little bit more if you remember, yeah, when you spoke about that, the smaller plates analogy and how you applied it.
100%. So that was probably the biggest like direct return on anything I've ever done, to be honest. Like that's right up there. is having a bank account with less money that I spend on a day-to-day basis and storing money away that's out of reach. Because it's so simple to go out and you think, oh, I'll get that extra thing on the menu or whatever it is. But when you have structure to it, you make good decisions because you're not relying on willpower to make that decision where you cave in and you go, I'll take that extra thing because it doesn't matter. It's only $10, $20, $30. But you do that over and over again, and eventually you have nothing, or at least way less than you should have in your account. And I noticed that just on a day-to-day basis that you'd think if you're spending less money and trying so hard to do that, that your life feels compromised, like you miss out on good opportunities. But I found that it's the complete opposite because you feel justified in making those decisions. When you're buying something, you're thinking, no, this actually makes sense for me to buy this thing because I've done the work in the back end to justify that. And you sort of get, in some ways, a dopamine from buying the right things when you know you've done the work, as opposed to doing no work with your finances and expecting this great outcome from it. Like we do zero work, most entrepreneurs at least, we do no work with our finances, expect to use all of it. And it's a bad cycle of doing that compared to putting in the extra 10, 15 minutes a week to do your finances correctly, where you get the fruits of your labor at the end of all of that. And so that's been huge for me is opening my bank accounts in a way where it helps me instead of just taking all my money out of there, justifying every single expense and relying on willpower to make good decisions. Because at the end of the day, you're going to cave into willpower at some point. And so that's been extremely helpful in doing that. Even just, this is where it's so multifaceted working with you is it's not even like just that side, but how you look at it. It's all about biology, like you said, of doing what works for you as opposed to what works for that guy or this person, whatever it is. It's what works for me and adjusting my system for me. So everything is built around my lifestyle. And that's probably the biggest element that's helped build everything from the banking to how I adjust in terms of my day, whatever it is. Everything's built for me. And you don't get that experience anywhere else. And that's why working with you has been such a unique experience is everything is built for my day, what I need to do, and ultimately to produce the highest quality results, whether that's more money in the bank account at the end of each month or having more energy at the end of each day to do what I got to do. And so that's been huge for me as well.
No, and I love that you bring that up, brother. That seriously means a lot. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of having like a fully personalized program. And when it comes to putting together the profit and the performance, like those two pieces, which in a lot of cases people think that are separated because that's what we do in the program. I think you just hit the like, yeah, you just hit the target of like why they work so well simultaneously. It's because it's all about human behavior, at least the way that we've been building it, right? Like as you just said it, each person each person is different. Like there are certain things that are indeed rooted to our biology, but when it comes to like performance and the way that you manage money, there are certain things that just based on how you are, the habits that you have, the way that you've been operating for years and years and years, you've like instilled certain behaviors and habits, right? So again, the key to maximum outputs, and I like to remind every person that I work with is getting your biology to work for you instead of against you, right? And what that means is it's way easier or way more efficient from like a resource perspective because again, we're limited with resources, right? And I love that you're always going back to that now after all those conversations that we're having, like time, energy, attention, willpower, right, is also a limited resource. Limited means that it runs out, which means that if you use them, they're no longer available. So it is way more efficient to, instead of trying to change your habits or your behavior, which is again very, very difficult and very resource consuming, it is way easier to just change the system around the habits and behaviors that you already have to help you achieve the goals that you have. And how it all falls together is like when it comes to both performance and as well as profit, like yes, of course, again, there are certain things that you do need to understand, right? Like there are certain things from like the profit trust system, the stuff that we've been doing, also from the performance stuff that don't change, but the way that we adapted to what works for you, Erwin, specifically. I mean, you being in the UK and like you being kind of a night owl and going to bed way later, right? Like I really don't like when you hear a lot of, I mean, for me, it's like a really big red flag when, for example, a performance coach or whoever tells you like, yeah, bro, you should, like those you shoulds, right? You should wake up early. You should wake up at 5 a.m. without knowing anything about your situation, right? Or having any context around you, right? Or you should do X thing with your money. It's like, bro, no, like that's not how it works. So yeah, I think it's, yeah, it all comes down to that. Of course, having certain foundations that you do need to put together. But the thing that, at least from the work that we've been doing, that I've been doing with everyone that I work with, is just like, yeah, how can we tap into your biology, your behaviors that you already have to build the systems around it? So now that you've mentioned that, I would love if you could dive a little bit deeper into, yeah, how that looked like, or like, yeah, how that looked like on the performance side of things. I remember in the beginning, there were some issues with like you being able to stay consistent with the workouts, for example, or with sleep, or like with the productive stuff, or even recently the conversation that we had of like how do we balance when you push and when you rest, right? When you recover. And yeah, if you could dive a little bit deeper into that, I think would be great to hear that side as well, the performance side.
100%. Yeah, I think it's something that again, it's so left like just in the air. Like, oh, I hope I'm going to do enough work today, or I hope I'm going to get what I want. And that's probably one of the best conversations I've had with you on one of our calls was what is work? How do we even define that? And a lot of people, it's like, oh, how many hours I work, but how many of those result in me getting something from what I'm doing? Like, oh, I work 12 hours today. Yeah, but how much of that resulted in more revenue? Is revenue even the goal, or whatever is that goal going towards? And I still remember that conversation of it being getting closer to where you want to get to. That's work. But so many of us just say, oh, I got up at 5 a.m. today and I did this, and then that, and then I finished at 9 p.m. But what actually got done? Not that much. You just have these glory metrics of I got up at this time, went to bed at this time. And that's why with what we did was, what time do I have to wake up to get maximum outputs? What time do I have to go to sleep? What times do I work best? Is it straight when I wake up? Is it 2 hours after I wake up? I train first, whatever it is. And that's what I found for me was lack of consistency just came to I was fighting biology just to make a point. Oh, if I get up at 5 a.m., it looks better on paper, but is that going to keep you consistent? And they're the conversations that we don't have. It's all about like what looks good as opposed to what's going to help you grow the business. The same thing even with the finances. The Stripe screenshots look great, but how much is really left at the end of the month? And I think that's what we do a lot as entrepreneurs. It's all about the metrics as opposed to what that results in. And so working with you on that has always been, what can I do, or what traits do I have that helps me get to that next level? When do I work best? How do I work best? What environment produces the best version of me? And doubling down on that. And having somebody to chat with about that. I've tried to do that myself. It's basically impossible because you need somebody to challenge. And that's why those calls are so effective is you'll sit there and say, Erwin, that's not what you've told me based on the last two calls. This is what really sounds like. And I'll be like, yeah, that actually makes sense. I have been saying that. You need somebody to sit there and really challenge you, not like somebody who's just going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Give it a go. Give it a go. We'll see how it goes. But you really challenge and make sure that this lines up with what I've said. And that allows me to really rethink the problems that I'm having. And ultimately, at the end of each call, I'm sitting there for 30, 40 minutes breaking down because I've not been let off the hook. I've been told this is what you need to do. And it's good to have that directness instead of just being really generic and just letting me do my own thing. So that's been really helpful as well.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because I think the easiest person to fool is yourself, right? So that's why it's always great to have like someone external. And I think something that's been amazing from the work that we've been doing together, which I do need to also recognize you a lot for that, is because at the end of the day, it takes two to tango, especially in like a coaching scenario, right? And a lot of the approach that I like to take that I think it's been amazing to have those conversations like the one that you just mentioned, where we define what work means and like making things a bit more objective, is thinking from first principles, which it comes down to that, right? And thinking from first principles, or that's the way that I like to teach, because at the end of the day, I only work with entrepreneurs, business owners, and I really don't like the approach where you go into a problem and people just tell like, oh, do this just because I tell you so, right? Why? Because at the end of the day, the way that I see it is, especially again, for owners or for founders or for entrepreneurs specifically, the way that I think about it is like the best way to instill true change, long lasting change in a way that it makes sense and like actually helps the business and helps the owner is by making sure that the connection happens inside of their brain, right? So that's why I love that approach. But it's not easy, right? Like, because first principles thinking requires that you question and you challenge every assumption that you have about a given like problem or situation. And I think, yeah, I try to remind all the people that I work with, because sometimes it can feel a little bit like yeah, challenging and people put their defenses up. But like with you, it's been honestly incredible just seeing you take that. Like every time that you bring something up, just having that openness for us to just challenge it, question it, and together come down to like a conclusion from a first principles perspective. So yeah, I just want to bring that up and recognize you for that, which has been incredible. And yeah, I think a lot of what you've mentioned comes down to also the input versus output mentality, right? Where a lot of people are just so focused on like inputs, right? It's like, how many hours did I work today? At what time did I wake up? Which at the end of the day, again, does that really matter? And don't get me wrong, we're not saying don't work hard. Work like hard work is required, but it's not just like it's not the thing that is going to get you closer to point B, right? Like what we mentioned of moving away from point A does mean that you're getting closer to point B, which requires, well, first of all, you need to have clarity on what point B even means, right? And then making sure that that energy is directed towards getting you closer there, which I think has been one of the most, honestly, remarkable and fulfilling and satisfying things from the work that we've done together is just seeing how you've changed that mentality. Because I know that just like myself, you come from this world of like just high achievers and like, bro, just hustle and work hard. Like, and again, there's nothing wrong with working hard. It's just like, how are you channeling that energy? And I think you brought it up last week where you said like, bro, I'm working less than before, like way less than before, but achieving way more, right? Like, so if you don't mind sharing a little bit about how that's been recently, like how that shift in mindset and just that approach of thinking from first principles and challenging those things has led you to achieving that.
100%. I mean, even on my desk now, it's a small change that I've made is like having a small notebook each day of exactly in terms of inputs, what I have to do to achieve the outputs that I'm looking for. And this is something we worked on, instead of thinking work as time, it's actions. Then you start to think about what actions directly get me closer to where I want to be, and you optimize for those. Because when it's about time, what I was doing in the beginning was you show up to your desk and you think, what fires are going on in the business? Let me solve those problems. But how do I know they're going to get me closer to where I want to be? And that's where focusing on actions instead, what directly heads me closer to the location I want to get to, whether it's an amount of money, a certain amount of employees, whatever it is. I'm making sure that everything I do in that day helps me get closer to that, and I'm cutting the rest off. Like 20% of what you do is getting 80% of your output. So let me just focus on the 20%, cut the rest out. And that's where that's really happened from is I can work a little bit less and get a lot more because what I'm doing is optimized for me to grow my business. And it's again, those calls are really focused with you on what are those actions? What are those things I need to be focusing on? And what's not getting anything? What is just wasting my time and attention throughout the day, whether it's speaking with a team member who's not helping me get any closer or talking too much on Slack with clients, whatever it is, that's not helping me or them get any closer to where they need to be or where I need to be. And so cutting all of that out and optimizing for what's going to help me get where I want to go, that's been the biggest element. And then obviously figuring out what those actions are and then going all in on those things every single day instead of doing a bunch of tasks just to sit at the end of the day and say, I worked 12 hours, I worked 14 hours, but basically 6 of those I did nothing valuable or intentional that helped me get closer to where I want to be.
Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. I love just makes me really happy. It's music to my ears hear how you've been speaking about these things because it's been a big change from when we started working in the very beginning to how things look today, which I think it's amazing because I think that speaks to the fact, which again is not easy, of you being open to be challenged and questioned and get to your own conclusions from your own perspective. And I think sometimes some of my favorite calls that we've had have been the ones where we've sat down to define what something means, right? Like where we've, from a first principles perspective, broken down of what you just said, like, oh, what does work even mean, right? I think it was one of the calls where we spoke about fun and stuff like that, right? So I think having that openness and just hearing you speak the way that you are, bro, makes me extremely happy. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, how did that change happen? Like, if you can recall when we just started working together, what was like the biggest challenges that you were facing? And yeah, like, what did you try to solve? What did you try to do to solve those challenges before and how you're approaching them now that you have like this way of approaching and thinking and the systems that we've implemented?
100%. So the biggest challenges were that I was broad with everything. So there was no structure. It was just like, oh, whatever gets done today gets done. So super inconsistent with the meaningful work that needed to be done, whether it's consistently doing calls, whatever it is. Nothing was getting tracked or managed correctly, and therefore I couldn't double down. So if you'd ask me, like, what am I doing today that's important? I would not know. Same thing with finances. How much specifically did you save this month? I wouldn't know. And so nothing was being tracked correctly, and therefore there was just a lot of gray area. I didn't know whether what I was doing was resulting in what I wanted. And that's a big question we also focus on is like, what do I want from these elements? What do I want from my day? Do I want to work 16 hours or do I want to work 10? And why do I want to do that? Always going to first principles. Why? And so, like I said in the beginning, it was just all over the place compared to now where it's structured. I'm saving more money than ever. And it feels easy because there's systems doing the work for me as opposed to sitting down with a pen each week and spending 5 hours managing my finances, getting nowhere. Really simple structures now in place that save me a bunch of money, make sure I'm doing the right work so that I get to the end of my day, ultimately looking at what I've done and knowing that it's getting me closer to where I want to be and defining that by itself. Where do I want to be specifically? So every action I take directs me closer to that instead of being where I was in the beginning of super generic, not having a clue where I was trying to get to with my finances, with performance, and with the time I have each day. So everything's now getting me closer to where I want to be, which is a really good feeling because every second is being used correctly instead of like, is this really going to do anything? You sort of doubt what you're focusing on. I know every second of what I focus on in my day is getting me closer to where I want to be now.
Bro, I love that. So, what do you think or what do you feel would have happened if you decided to do nothing about your situation back then or not work with me? Where do you think that you would be now?
Definitely a lot less money in the bank. That's for sure. That's probably the biggest, like just clear cut financial, a lot less money in the bank because not only making more money through the systems we've implemented of spending time on the right activities to make more money, but I think the biggest one, even just looking at that one, is so much money, like half as much money being spent on just things that could have easily been done by spending 3 hours in my bank. So that's been just completely game changing, just having that. And then on the time side as well of being rewarded for doing the right outputs and being able to sit at the end of each day and know that I've done what's required to get where I want to be.
Love that, brother. Again, so music to my ears. And that's what this is all about for me, just listening. Yeah, those changes be applied and see the impact that they've had. So yeah, I would love to ask what was your favorite part of the work that we've done together so far? I mean, we still have a lot to go, and I know we keep bringing this up every call of like we're barely scratching the surface, but it's great to see all of these things that we put in place, just the results that they're giving. But yeah, so far, what your favorite part of the work that we've done together has been?
We could have a whole call just about that. Biggest piece, I would say it's questioning everything. We like very often just take things as what we know. It's like, oh yeah, I guess that's just how it's supposed to be. I guess it's just how it's supposed to be that on Stripe it shows this much and my bank account shows this much. I guess it's supposed to be that I work 12 hours a day, only four of them are productive. And sort of having somebody to question beliefs has been so helpful because we don't really get that on a day-to-day basis of somebody sitting there and really challenging from first principles of, is this even getting where you want to be? And so every call we've had has always been that, whether it's talking about banking, whether it's talking about the time, the performance, whatever it is, just having those conversations about really breaking down and challenging my beliefs, because ultimately the beliefs you have, the beliefs I have led me to where I am and where you are. And therefore, if you want to get to the next level, you got to change your beliefs. But if you don't have somebody to have those conversations with, there's no way you're going to be able to shift them and remove the limiting ones to get to where you want to be.
I love that, brother. Appreciate you for sharing that. Would you mind just speaking about, because I know just like myself, you've been through a lot of different programs, how the personalized experience, which I think is something that was really lacking in the industry and why I've been so ruthless about who I allow into the program and who I work with, because I just spend so much time, again, just the limited amount of resources. I know a lot of people, which again, there's nothing right or wrong at the end of the day, as you just said, it's all about what is the goal that you have internally, right? But me personally, I love the one-on-one coaching and those conversations that like the ones that you and me have had is like one of the best things that can happen to me. I really enjoy those. But yeah, that experience compared to what you've seen out there of like the fully personalized program and the experience, like for example, and I think a big part of the philosophy which we really try to embody, and I think it's been a really good example of the work that we've done with you, is make it impossible for our clients to fail, right? That's something that I like to live up to every single day, and going above and beyond, like for example, when we realized that your tax situation was a bit complicated, and even though you're in the UK, which falls a bit outside of my personal comfort zone, being trained in like the US, specifically speaking about like tax compliance and stuff with the profit first, but like yeah, making that connection, for example, with this tax specialist from the UK and like being on the calls with you, making sure everything was set up properly. Yeah, if you could just speak to that from what you've seen in the other programs that you've been a part of, or what you've seen from like that personalized experience, how is that different from the other programs?
Yeah. The biggest thing I think is you can get the best, but are they as committed to your goal as you are? That's the difference between this is most programs you'll join, sure, they might be good at what they do, but they're not as committed to your goal as you are. When you work with somebody like yourself, you're committed to the highest extent to making sure we get what we need. Like there's so many things that you've gone above and beyond with, like finding somebody in the UK who can be connected with. That didn't have to happen. Like you didn't have to go that extra mile, but you did because you were committed to seeing me win. And that's like single-handedly the most valuable piece of what separates this to another program is they don't need to do that, but you do it because you're as committed to us as we are to ourselves. And it seems like such a simple thing, but nobody does it. And that's why it's so much of an effect on what I'm doing is every call, it's not like, oh yeah, I need support. It's, how can I help you immediately? Who can I connect you with? There's no other program that gives you that level of support. They just process you through, get you the result, and throw you out. Your whole program is an experience. Who can I connect you with? How can I help you in this way? Maybe I don't know about this specifically, but let me find you somebody who can help you. There's nowhere else where you're going to get that. And that's been the biggest piece of that is having that personalized experience where you feel like a member of my team as opposed to just a coach who's just kind of like dipping their toes into your business. And ultimately, if you go and fail at what you do, it's like, oh, well, I guess it didn't work out for them, but you'll come in at those points where things go wrong and actually support you instead of leaving you out, which I find a lot of programs do, is they sort of leave you to your own and work with their best clients so it looks good. Whereas you jump in when things go hard and actually support us at the highest level.
Yeah, and I think a big problem of that, just to pinpoint on, like, again, because I'm a big believer, and I know you are as well, of embody what you teach, right? Like if I'm speaking about like profit systems, making sure that I'm implementing them myself, and what we were speaking about, like the outputs, right? What does point B even mean to you? And in my case, which it's really, again, just brings me a lot of fulfillment to hear that from the experience that we've been able to provide, that being our goal. But having a good financial system allows you to not be just purely focused on scaling revenue, but making sure that I have enough bandwidth to deliver in a way that it's truly personalized. And yeah, by leading with examples. So with that being said, because I know that a lot of people have been burnt out in the industry, especially when it comes to like scaling a business and money and all that stuff. But if someone was watching this and they're on the fence about working with me, what would you say to them?
Well, if you want to make more money, this is definitely the right place to be because that's what this whole thing has been able to do in all realms of doing the right thing and being rewarded by what you're doing. Because I kind of view this as you're being taxed by doing the wrong things. You might pay 40, 50, whatever, 20% tax where you are. By doing the wrong things, you're being taxed on top of all of that. By you spending 5 hours a day, 3 hours a day being unproductive, you're basically being taxed on that time. You're not getting paid for the work you're doing that you could be traveling or going and doing what you enjoy doing or working more, whatever it is. You have a tax in your life when you're not working with somebody like Eduardo. So if you're fine knowing that you're being taxed, then you got a lot of other problems to deal with. So that's what I would say to that is joining that removes that and you get to double down on what you can do best and ultimately make as much money and impact than you can.
I love that analogy. And I think it's taxed not just on money, but as you said, like time, energy, attention, which are very valuable and limited resources. I really appreciate you showing that, Erwin. And if you can, could you please give just one piece? And I know we kind of wrap up each call similar to this, and it's always a challenge to find the biggest takeaway. But if you can just give one piece of hard tactical advice, not just from the work that we've done together, but just from like your own experience, everything that you've been living as an entrepreneur and achieving, one piece of hard tactical advice to anyone who's listening that may be looking for some help?
Wow, what a question. That's a difficult one. I would say it's funny. It's literally lining up with what we're doing is the closest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Like go straight there. If you're on the fence, go straight to it. Like we sometimes get there and it's like, why is this difficult? It's like part of the process. And we get so shocked when it gets difficult. That's part of the journey. Instead of being shocked by it, go, no, that's why other people won't go this direction. I'm willing to go there. And so having all the systems we've been speaking about in place, that's directing me in the right direction and having my biology work for me instead of against me getting close to that. That's been the biggest thing is just doing what's required and not being surprised or shocked when those bad things happen. It's part of the process and it's why nobody else is going to follow you to get there.
I love that. But I think the biggest part where we sometimes forget, because I mean, I've personally been through that, and I think you've personally been through that, as many other people that I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs that we both have had experience of working with in the past, is that sometimes they achieve a goal. And I've asked this question multiple times in like different workshops and keynotes that I've given, like who here, always with only like entrepreneurs, right? Who here has achieved a certain financial goal with their business, but end up feeling way like stressed, unfulfilled, more burnt out that you did in the beginning, and wondering why do you even bother, right? And every single hand went up. And I think the biggest reason, which relates to what you just shared, is people don't even take a step back to even ask themselves, what is point B, right? Which I think is something that we've been drilling on really, really hard on some of our most recent calls of like, okay, what is point B? What is point B? Let's get clear of like, what is it and why? Because then, yes, what you just said of like, cool, then the next the fastest way is just a straight line going from point A to point B, but most people have no idea of what point B is or don't have idea from a first principles perspective. It's been very frustrating sometimes just to hear someone saying like, yeah, I want to make 50K per month. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just like, why, right? Oh, why? Oh, because, I mean, I don't know, just because I've seen my coach do it or someone else in this program do it, right? And I think it's that first critical piece of, yes, I love that takeaway. The fastest path to your goals is just a straight line, but before that, just get clarity on like what point B even is, right? So appreciate you for sharing that, brother. And man, if people are interested in working with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. On YouTube, just my first name, Erwin, Erwin, and my surname, Cronk on YouTube.
Amazing. Well, brother, appreciate your time. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure working with you so far, having you here. And I'm excited for what's coming towards the end of the year. We still have a lot of work to do and what we have left together. But for those of you watching, thank you for your time. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Eduardo Leo, and I help online founders scale their businesses without burning out. We install profit and performance systems to help entrepreneurs keep more money, work fewer hours, and maximize their outputs. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. How do we maximize the outputs for the limited inputs that we have? I'm a certified peak performance coach, recognized by the International Coaching Federation, Profit First Professional, and Fix This Next Advisor with over 5 years of experience and more than 2,000 hours of coaching in multiple formats. And I've had the privilege of working in more than 300 online founders across the globe, from 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs in multiple niches to internal roles in fast-growing companies, leading the back-end operations of client success for a 7-figure info product business doing more than $200,000 a month with only 16 members, managing over 200 clients alone, and leading an appointment setting team that booked 30 plus qualified calls per week and helped increase the company's revenue by 600%. So if you're serious about building a profitable, high performance online business without burning yourself to the ground, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.